Hi, and in this video tutorial I'm going to show you the basic introduction to the Blender game engine. So the very first things you want to make sure that you have set up properly is up here in the top center you want this drop down menu to say Blender game engine, and that will change the settings over here on the right in the properties toolbar. Then you're going to want to scroll down and you want to find this section right over here that says shading, and you want to make sure that you activate GLSL, and that will give you all of the nice lighting effects and graphics and materials and textures and all that kind of good stuff showing up properly. Okay, next, the very basics of the game engine are going to take place in a new editor window that we'll use right down here at the bottom of our screen. So in the default Blender setup, this bottom editor is a animation, a timeline editor, which of course helps you animate. We don't want it right now to be an animation timeline editor. We want it to be what's called a logic editor. So we're going to come down here and in the bottom left hand corner we're going to click on the icon, and you're going to see all the different editors that Blender has to offer. And for Blender Game Engine we're going to go here to the logic editor, which has the little old school retro joystick. Okay, so next we're going to go ahead and resize the editor so it's a little bit more visible, and you can simply do that by left clicking and dragging this little divider line between the logic editor window and the 3D viewport. So left click and raise that up a little bit. We don't need this properties toolbar over here on the right hand side. That's a little bit more advanced. We can close that by pressing the letter N, and of course you can make it come back by pressing N again. Okay, so in here in our logic editor we can zoom in by scrolling the mouse wheel just like we do in the 3D window. If you do zoom in, you can pan by holding the middle mouse button down. So you can pan left and right just to make sure you can see what's what. Okay, so I have my cube selected, and with my cube selected you'll see down here that it actually says cube 3 times, telling you what object you currently have selected. And what I'm going to do is I've got 3 columns. I've got a sensor column, controller column, and actuator column. And basically you need all 3 to basically be able to give your objects intelligence, to give them coding. So this isn't traditional coding. You're not writing lines of code. This is using intelligent logic bricks, so like smart Lego bricks, and very similar to what we did in the first semester with stencil. Okay, so a sensor is something that detects information. So if you choose a mouse sensor, it's going to know that you pressed a button on the mouse, or you scrolled the wheel on the mouse, or you moved the mouse. If you choose a keyboard sensor, it's going to take input from the keyboard, so the player presses the space bar or presses the up arrow. Once that sensor detects information, it's then going to pass the signal onto the controller. The controller, and you can see that there's a handful of them. The most common one, and the one that we're going to use 99% of the time this semester, is going to be the AND controller. It's just the most common one. And that's going to be able to pass the signal, as sort of the middleman, pass the signal onto the actuator column. The actuator column actually carries out the action. It is the verb of the 3, and this will actually carry out some sort of behavior. And you can see here that there is a mouse actuator, that there's motion actuator, so you can of course move objects around. You can change things on the cameras, you can play animations, you can play sounds, you name it. So detecting input, the sensor, passing it on and keeping everything nice and controlled and organized, and then the action with the actuator. So let's go ahead and simply set this up. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, with my cube selected, I'm going to choose Add Sensor. I'm going to do a keyboard sensor. Zoom out a little bit. So there's a whole bunch of different things to look at here. We're just going to go over the most important basics here. So in the top here it tells you what the name of the sensor is, and it's a keyboard sensor, which is pretty normal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this key move the cube in a forward direction. And for this video, I'm going to say that the positive y-axis, so the direction that the green arrow is going in, that's my positive y, or that's my forward direction. So just remember that whatever direction the three arrows are going in, that is the positive. So positive x, positive y, and positive z. Okay, so I'm going to call this one, and you can really make it any key you want. I know a lot of you might want to use the arrow keys to control. Some of you might want to use W, A, S, and D. I'm going to go ahead and use W, A, S, and D just because that's comfortable for me. Make sure after you type in your letter here that you do hit the return key, otherwise it won't take it. Alright, so that's the sensor name, it's W. I'm going to come down here where it says key, and now it's asking for what key is this going to be. I'll press W. And that's pretty much it for this one. Once this is done, you can collapse the sensor here, and you can see that it takes up a lot less space. Okay, I'm going to leave that open just for now. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add in an actuator, and I'm going to add in a motion actuator. And you can see right now that we have something called a simple motion actuator, and not too much there. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wire this up. So I'm going to activate it. So I'm going to drag a little wire, some people call it a noodle, and I'm going to drag it from this dot over to this little donut hole over here. And when you drag them there, Blender is smart enough to know that it needs a controller in between to pass the signal. So instead of you manually adding an AND controller, saying add AND, you can just drag it right over and it should work for you. Okay, so I'm going to change the name of this actuator, and I'm going to go ahead and call it forward. So I like to type in what the actuator is carrying out. Okay, so you'll see that I have two rows here. I have location and I have rotation, so lock and rock. So location, we have X, Y, and Z, and rotation, we have X, Y, and Z. So by looking here, I want it to move on the positive Y axis. So if I come down here, I'll go ahead and I'll click inside there. I'll type in 1 and I'll hit return. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and try this out. I'm going to zoom out. I'll press P for play. I'll press W. And there it goes. When I lift up on the W key, you'll see that it stops, and that's pretty much it. Don't worry about the lighting there. I could go ahead and I could change the lighting a little bit. I'm just going to press Z. I'm going to choose texture view, and now our cube looks a little bit more normal. There we go. So again, if I press W, it moves forward, and there we go. Notice that it stops instantly as soon as I lift up on the W key. There's no gravity, there's no ground or anything like that. I think I'm going to go ahead and take care of that now. So I'm going to go ahead and lift up the cube. So I'll press G, Z, bring it up on the Z axis. I'll now add in a plane, so I'll do Shift A, add in a plane, scale it up. I'll scale it on the Y axis a bit so I have some space there. Okay, so notice that when I select another object, for instance, I've got the ground plane selected here, notice that all of my logic goes away. And that's because there's nothing on the ground right now. And there really doesn't need to be. But don't get nervous when all of a sudden you see all your work disappear. That's just because you don't have your actor selected, your object selected. Okay, so if I go ahead and I press play now, you'll notice that, again, there's no gravity, so the cube is not falling, and it just jets off and goes quite quickly. So if the force is too much, I can come down here and instead of a speed of 1, I could go ahead and do something like 0.25 and again press play to test it out, and that's moving at a much nicer speed. Sorry about the letters going over there. And so that's all right. What I want now is I want gravity. I want this to act more like a solid object. So to finish this video up, I'm going to go ahead and leave this video right here, and we'll stop here because we're coming up on 10 minutes. In the next video, I'll make a shorter version, and I'll talk to you about how to add in gravity, and I'll show you a couple different kinds of settings that you can do to add in basic gravity and get some more reaction out of your simple character here. I'll see you in the next video.